Good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim. Today we continue our journey with Christiana, Mercy, and Christiana's boys in Chapter 20, Part 1, The Unauthorized Fruit. On the other side of the wall that bordered the way on which Christiana and her companions were going was a garden belonging to the one who owned the barking dog. Branches from some of the fruit trees that grew in the garden reached over the wall, and many who traveled on the way, upon seeing the fruit, would stop and gather the fruit, eating it to their own detriment. One of Christiana's sons was attracted by the appearance of the trees and their fruit, and as a boy would be inclined to do, he picked some fruit and began to eat it. His mother scolded him for this, but he refused to take her seriously. "Well," she said, "you have crossed the boundary and have taken someone else's property. That fruit is not ours." She was unaware, however, that the fruit belonged to the enemy, a fact that, had she known it, would have caused her great fear. Fortunately, however, they passed by without incident. Chapter 20, Part 2. The Attack by Two Ill-Favored Ones. They were only a short distance into the way when they saw two ill-favored ones coming swiftly down toward them. Christiana and Mercy covered their faces, and they all huddled together as they pressed forward on their journey. The men approached them and walked right up to the women as if they would embrace them. "Stand back, or go peacefully on by us as you should," said Christiana. The two men seemed to be deaf, however, and they ignored Christiana's word. Instead, they began to grab at Christiana and Mercy. Christiana became very angry at this and began to kick at them fiercely. Mercy and the boys did what they could also. Christiana again demanded, "Stand back and go away. We are pilgrims, and therefore we have no money, but live on the charity of our friends." Then one of the men said, "We are not after your money. If you will grant us but one small favor we ask of you, we will make real women of you forever." Now Christiana, wondering what this could mean, answered them again, saying, "We will not listen to you or regard what you say or yield to anything you ask of us. We are in a hurry and cannot stay. Our undertaking is a matter of life and death." So again they tried to go on past the men, but they stood in their way. "We don't intend to hurt you," said the ill-favored ones. "We want something else." "Yes," said Christiana, "I can tell that you want to take us body and soul, for that is why you have come. But we are willing to die on the spot rather than allow ourselves to be brought into your snares. We will not risk our eternal well-being." Christiana and Mercy then both began crying out, "Murder! Murder!" Thus they put themselves under the laws provided for the protection of women. But the men continued to press their attack, seeking to overpower them, so they continued to cry out. Chapter 20, Part 3. Since the pilgrims had not yet gotten very far on their journey, their voices could be heard from the gate. Some of those inside the house came out to see what was happening. Recognizing Christiana's voice, they ran quickly to her aid. By the time they were in sight of them, the pilgrims were involved in an all-out brawl. Then one of those who came to their aid called out to the ruffians, "What do you think you are doing? Would you cause the Lord's people to sin?" He attempted to capture the men, but they escaped over the wall into the garden, and the dog became their protector. The reliever came to Christiana and Mercy and asked them how they were. They answered, "We give thanks to your prince that we are all right, but we have been somewhat frightened. We thank you also for coming to our defense. Otherwise we would have been overcome." Chapter 20, Part 4. Their Need of a Guide. The reliever said to them, "When you were entertained at the gate, I knew you recognized your frailty, and I wondered why you didn't ask the Lord for a guide to protect you. Had you done so, you might have avoided these troubles and dangers, for he certainly would have granted you one." "Goodness!" exclaimed Christiana. "We were so thrilled with the blessings we were experiencing that we completely forgot about the dangers and snares ahead. Besides, who would ever have thought that such awful men would lurk so close to the king's palace? We very definitely should have asked our Lord for a guide. But tell me, since our Lord knew it would be to our advantage to have one, why didn't he offer to send one along with us?" "It is not always wise to grant things that are not requested," said the reliever. "By doing so, these things are often taken for granted and not appreciated. But when we feel the need for something, our estimation of it is more in line with its true worth. And thus, when we ask for it and receive it, we appreciate it and use it with gratitude. If my Lord had granted you a guide before you felt a need for one, you would not have realized or regretted your oversight in not asking for one. So all things work for good and contribute to your being more cautious." Then Christiana asked, "Should we then go back and ask the Lord and confess our foolishness and ask him for a guide?" "I will present the confession of your foolishness to him. You do not need to start over. All along the way you will have no lack of provision, for preparations have been made in each of my Lord's lodgings for the reception of his pilgrims. All that is needed to arm pilgrims against every attack has been provided for. Like I said, however, he desires that you ask him for these things. If something is not worth asking for, it is deemed cheap and inferior." When he had finished saying these things, he returned to his place, and the pilgrims went on their way. "What a jolt this has been!" exclaimed Mercy. "I thought we were past all danger, and that we would never again have to face sorrow." "My sister, your innocence may excuse you," replied Christiana, "but I knew better. For that reason I am more at fault. I saw the danger before I ever walked out my door, and yet I didn't think to get help from where it was readily available. I am very much to blame." "I'm confused," said Mercy. "How did you see this before you left your home?" "Well," answered Christiana, "one night before I left I was lying in my bed, and I had a dream. I thought I saw these same two men. They were standing at the foot of my bed, plotting how they might prevent my salvation. I was in great turmoil, but I can still remember their words. They said, 'What shall we do with this woman? In her waking and in her sleeping she cries out for forgiveness. If she is allowed to continue on as she has begun, we will lose her as we lost her husband.' That dream should have made me careful to ask for help when it was available." "Well," said Mercy, "this experience has given us an opportunity to discover our own imperfections, and our Lord has used it to reveal to us the riches of his grace. It is clear to see that in accordance with his will and pleasure, and in spite of our carelessness, he has showered his kindness upon us. I had heard said that he will redeem them from the hand of those stronger than they, and so he has done with us." And that's the end of chapter 20. Next week we'll pick up with chapter 21, part 1, Arrival at the Interpreter's House. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.